you believe that we started recording right in the middle of 2020 with all of the COVID and lockdowns going on around us, unable to meet up? So like many a young gentleman, we turned to the internet for our entertainment. Tried to find a place where we could meet up and talk about the good, the bad, and that time that Stu saw a pelican on the canal. In order to facilitate our dreams of answering all of the big questions in film, and after a few attempts at recording via other methods to various levels of success, we found Zencastr, a super easy web-based one-stop shop for recording. Log in and you're ready to record in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take a tech genius to get high quality audio or video. And on top of that, the one time we have had an issue, the fact that the multi-layered backups are stored locally means it's easily fixed all in browser. There are plenty of tools you need when you start podcasting, so let Zencastr take that headache away, as it offers a place to record, edit and distribute all from one website. Any lazy bones Jones can pick up and play and have studio quality audio or 4K video put out for the world to see when using Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code CAGEFIGHTING and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. And now, hit the music. Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope everybody's keeping well in the world right now.
Hello everyone, Stu here. Matt's still not back. Who knows when he will be. There's nothing to say. Everyone's all deflated for different reasons. But
yeah, sports stuff's just miserable at the minute.
I can't even put that little meme that I made the last time of one cheering me up because they're both awful. But there we are. Fun thing to talk about instead.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, like mentioning Matt, I do need to ask him when he wants to do a music cast at some point this month. So hopefully he'll be back in the next few weeks for something or other.
He was spotted yesterday and he did have his special bullyproof Pokemon cards in little plastic covers for each one. Right.
Yes. Well, I was with Ash Dolan, who was giving him the cards, and yeah.
It was quite enjoyable.
I think fair play to him because I think he's done quite a good job of building that collection pretty quick. But I mean, like he said in the group chat, I'm one to talk when it comes about collecting stuff. But yeah, like he's gone from 0 to 60 in no time at all, collected all those Pokemon cards. It's pretty impressive how he's got away with it.
I mean, we were just talking about nonsense. Oh no. I'll put it on Twitter so people can see it when this goes up. The the terrible away warm-up shirt.
Yes.
I went and claimed that because I didn't realise that they'd put loyalty merchandise cash in already.
Right.
So I had like 35 quid. And of course, you can't use it against your season ticket next season now. Like so you've got to spend it in the club shop on something. Even if you don't want anything, you might as well. But the minute I saw this thing, I thought I need to get it. It's so shit. Yeah, look at it coming your way now.
Let's have a look. Good God! I mean, that is just a headache waiting to happen, isn't it?
And it feels the material's like kind of silky horribleness, like off Temu.
Doesn't look pleasant. I mean, looking at that, it looks like the worst Weatherspoons pub carpet you've ever seen.
Yeah.
That is we'll put that out on the Twitter, and you can see for yourselves how absolutely horrific. I think as well the worst part of it is the bright. I don't even know. Is that red? Is that pink? Is that orange?
It's orange neon.
Sudo? Jesus. It's orange. Lines of horrendous.
Yeah, it's orange neon on a bright lime green and black background.
It's something. It is something else. It really is. Jesus.
But when I took it to the till, the woman was laughing. I thought, I wonder if this is the first one they've ever sold.
Yeah, she must have been astounded that there was somebody brave enough to wear that outside.
I haven't done it yet, but when we get our next win or first win, even Derby got one. So when that happens, I'll wear it with pride / shame.
Sounds like a plan. Right, anyway, I suppose we better move on and talk about the news that's been happening in the film world recently. First thing that really sprang to mind is the amount of anniversary showings and stuff that seem to be going on at the moment. So we're getting the Terminator with its 40th anniversary this year. Friends, like we mentioned it last week, Friends turns 30, like literally in the last week it's turned 30. Shaun of the Dead this weekend, at time of recording, has been released for its 20th anniversary. Interstellar's coming back for a run at the cinema for its 10th anniversary. So it seems like any decade that's got a 4 at the end of it, we've had a pretty good film in that year that years and years later we're talking about still. Like, all of those events are still quite important within their genre. They've made quite the impact still at this point. Is there anything from 2024 you think we might get a 20th anniversary?
I mean, nothing sprang to mind, which is always a worrying sign.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on my sheets to have a look, and I think it might be in a kind of ironic way with Madam Web, just for a laugh.
Yeah.
Which is shocking that was even this year anyway. But everything else, there's nothing that, like, obviously June Part 2 that I love, but it's not going to be one of them anniversary things.
Mm-hmm.
You won't like it, but it might be Deadpool and Wolverine. How that continues to be ridiculous and off the scale. You might get that, but everything else, I mean, we might have Iron Claw, maybe. But really, everything else, there's nothing that screams, oh, this is going to be a legacy. I mean, you got we talked about Shogun when Ash was on. We both got that. That might, but it's again, it's buried and it's very niche anyway. So there's nothing really.
That's probably not going to have the wide appeal that those things had.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking exactly the same. Like, I don't feel like there's been anything tremendous this year that's going to have the wide appeal to everybody. There's nothing quite that's got that, mass appeal, I suppose, is the word of it. There's nothing that's broken through. Everything has been very much within its silo. Like, I know we'll talk about the substance in a bit, I'm so sure of, but that's very much for a niche audience. Furiosa, I think, was a film that I enjoyed this year, but we won't talk about that in the same breath as Mad Max Fury Road.
No.
Everything just feels kind of siloed this year. The good has been good very much within its realms. There's nothing that I've seen so far this year that I thought, wow, the whole world will watch this and love it. And I think, I mean, don't get me wrong, I haven't seen Deadpool Wolverine, but it's a sequel, and it doesn't feel like sequels really cut through in quite the same way very often, especially one that is a sequel. You know, it's the third in a run of 3 and the umpteenth in a run of 97 Marvel films. It's like, it's just a film that's in the middle of something that's going on and on. So, yeah, I feel like I know we've said this several times, but I don't feel like 2024 has really kicked off. I'm hoping now we're just sort of heading into the awards run of films that things will change. But there's been nothing really this year that's really sort of grabbed people, which is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the best thing, I mean, even from a TV point of view, Mr. Bates versus the Post Office was the best thing on telly all year. But that ain't going to get an anniversary because of what it is.
Yeah, that is very true. That reminds me, there's a couple of TV shows that I wanted to run past you because I think you'll probably enjoy at least one of them. So I'm going to make a quick note of that. Next story I've found. So we're getting Paddington 3 is coming out. It'll be sometime in November. I haven't got the exact date. In the States, they're getting in January. So it's quite nice to have a good couple of month run before somebody else for a change. But they've already announced we're getting a Paddington 4, I believe it's 2027, and a Paddington TV series. I really hope the TV series is like the original stop motion animation kind of thing. Use the same voice actors and what have you, make it fun. And yeah, but do we want more Paddington, or do we think 3 is probably enough for the time being at least?
It's pushing the boundary of it's milking the cow too much. But it's Paddington, so we've already had 2, amazingly, so far. Obviously, the 3rd one's out soon, and it looked pretty fun. From what, obviously, I don't really care about watching the trailer for that. But it looks as fun as the other 2, so no problem with it. But it's like, do you then push it and have what will effectively be 7 or 8 hours of Paddington then altogether, depending on how long the TV series is? It's walking a fine line.
It is. I saw when they were talking about the next Paddington in Peru, that it's had influences from Werner Herzog movies. And I really hope that one of the movies that it's influenced by is Bad Lieutenant, because that's brilliant. But yeah, of all the things, I did not expect to see Werner Herzog and Paddington mentioned in the same breath. But I am really looking forward to it nonetheless. The first 2 were brilliant fun, so it's got like big shoes to fill, but like you say, from what we've seen so far, I think it can do it. Next story up, Emerald Fennell. Now I know you've been a big fan of Promising Young Woman and Saltburn. She's now adapting Wuthering Heights, and she has cast Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi in the 2 main roles, which has had a bit of consternation on the internet. People are saying that Margot Robbie's probably not the right fit because the main character, Kathy, is, for want of a better word, batshit insane. And they don't think that Robbie can bring that to the role, which I completely disagree with, because Margot Robbie is a phenomenal actor. So I think she could do that. The only issue is I don't know what her English accent is like. I can't remember a film where she's done it, but the other accent work she's done, I think, has always been pretty solid. So I don't really have any worries.
Well, they're bred for accents, they over there. So
yeah,
I wouldn't worry about it too much. It depends how faithful if it's gonna be, or if it's just gonna be loosely based on. Because I don't really like it. It's a bit stuffy for me. Not really my thing. But if they put a bit of a twist on it, yeah, great.
Because it's Fennell, I don't expect it to be a straight retelling of the story. Knowing what she's done in other genres, she does tend to play with the form of the genre. So I don't expect it to be a straight retelling. But at the same time, I think Wuthering Heights is one of the better adaptations, or one of the better stories from that period. It feels a little bit more interesting and a little less Jane Austen-y, I think, which tends to be more prim and proper. The other issue that people are taking at the moment is with Jacob Elordi playing Heathcliff, because Heathcliff is described as someone who's not white in the books. In the books, it never explicitly says he's a, Afro-Caribbean person of Romany descent. They don't say like he's gypsy or anything like that in the books. It just sort of makes reference to him being swarthy. And obviously, from what I've read, when that book was written, that probably was from one of the Latin countries, Spain, that sort of region. And Jacob Elordi is of Italian descent, I think. I feel like the internet's just working itself up for absolutely no purpose once again here. They're just moaning because they want to moan, I think.
It's olive-skinned, that's the point. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this isn't Robert Downey Jr. playing, and what's the name? Elizabeth Thingy playing a Romany or whatever character. This is someone who is of that descent, playing someone of that descent. And it's it's an undefined race as well. Like, this isn't a straight, he was a black man. It was never written that way. So it just seems a bit bizarre. Like, people want to complain because they complain about everything. And people seem to have a bit of a hate boner for Emerald Fennell. Like, she's very, very Marmite. I think what she's produced so far has been fun, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
It's been fairly lightweight. Like, there's a seed of depth to it, but doesn't always get that far. But it's usually, it's been watchable, to say the very least.
I mean, it's not like putting Rupert Grint in that role.
Yeah.
Completely different way.
Yeah,
These things don't need to be set in stone, and from what it sounds like, it works. So what's the problem? We talked about race swapping before, but this is actually not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
there's no problem.
He's not ethnic enough for people seems to be the issue, which seems a bit sort of
the opposite of the normal argument.
Yeah, it is. Because he clearly does have some, minority blood in him because he is of Italian descent. So he's not that he's just a straight white rich British guy. He's of another country's descent. And it feels like people are judging people on if they're black enough, if they're Asian enough. Do you know what I mean? It just feels so disingenuous. But I suppose Twitter's going to Twitter on these kind of things, isn't it? So I don't like it. But I like Jacob Elordi in Saltburn. Like, he was good as a bit of a pompous prick.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested to see him play the flip side of that coin of a man who's come from nothing to work his way. I'm looking forward to seeing his performance in that. Next up, Martin Scorsese has postponed his Sinatra and Jesus movies indefinitely. So with this one, he was going to adapt one of another story. I'm just pulling up the article on it now because I want to get the guy's name right. Shasaku Endo's 1973 novel, The Life of Jesus, was going to be one of his next movies. And they believe that it was going to be Andrew Garfield who was going to be playing the role of Jesus in this one. I don't know a lot about this story, but obviously following on from The Last Temptation of Christ, it does make me think that this is not going to be a biblical story, but rather other stuff that happened off screen in the Bible, maybe. So, I wouldn't expect him to tell the story of Easter. Like, that's not a Scorsese kind of project. I was kind of excited about it because I really like Andrew Garfield. I think he's an excellent actor. And obviously, we've spoke at length about Scorsese very recently. But yeah, so this one has just been put on the back burner for the time being, it seems. It was due to start filming in Israel, Italy and Egypt sometime this year. And Scorsese was going to be financing it himself. But it's still in development with no production schedule in place. I'm kind of disappointed because he could be capitalising on the momentum of Killers of the Flower Moon, obviously 10 Oscar nominations earlier this year. And we're probably not going to get a Scorsese film for a few years. And
it would have been about 5 hours long, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, 100%. Which, I mean, I'm fine with because it's Scorsese. Like, I trust him enough that he can make a film as long as he wants and it will still be an engaging watch. The other film, which was the Sinatra one, was supposed to have Leonardo DiCaprio playing Old Blue Eyes himself with Jennifer Lawrence, performing as Sinatra's second wife, Ava Gardner. The situation apparently here is because he hasn't been given the green light from Sinatra's estate is the reason why that film hasn't or isn't moving ahead at the moment. Because it does feel like Sinatra is one of the most important figures in American musical history.
Yeah, I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. I think I remember this was announced about 10 years ago. I'm sure it was.
2009 was the original announcement of this.
So it's not far off.
It's been pushed back and pushed back. But you thought really after 15 years there would have been some agreement or, say yes, say no, whatever, but apparently it's still up in the air.
And you you wouldn't think it was be a money thing, would you? Or is he gonna be cancelled? Are we gonna have a great granddad's name attached to this guy who's been cancelled? It would have happened by now. So
yeah,
bizarre.
But the Cape Fear TV series does appear to be moving ahead. Steven Spielberg is still in the pipeline with it, apparently, as well. So, I mean, Spielberg and Scorsese working together is exciting. I do kind of want to see what they're going to do with Cape Fear, because obviously the remake, the Bob De Niro one, was great fun. So, fingers crossed that'll at least tide us over until we get another Martin Scorsese movie. And obviously the last story is the passing of Maggie Smith, a British stalwart. Like, she's been in everything. Like, I don't think it's even being hyperbolic. She's done a bit of everything, Maggie Smith had, and kind of sad that she's finally no longer with us. Big part of the Downton world, big part of the Harry Potter world, and everything in between. Did quite a bit of work back in the day with some of the oh God, what's his name? There's the direct Ken Loach and those films back in the day. She's got a hell of a resume, and it was quite sad to say that she's no longer with us. Stu, I know you're a big fan of the Downton world, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean that was as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, that's a shame, especially with the third film coming out soon. No spoilers, obviously, but it was just a shame. It's a shame, and the only good thing about it was all the video with her and Judi Dench talking about being old together. That was quite funny. But I'd seen that before anyway. But yeah, like everyone, and you had Rob Schneider of all people talking about her on Twitter. I mean, every single person, oh, what a lovely lady she was. There you are. When even the weirdest people in the world have got nice things to say about you, then you know you've done something right.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it holds water, doesn't it? Like, she's one of those actors that you've never heard a bad word say about her. Like, everyone seems to have genuinely loved her. So yeah, sad news. Sad news, that one is. Right, moving on then. So, next question is obviously, what have you seen in the last month? Stu, there's one film that we need to talk about first and foremost, I think, which is The Substance. I'm genuinely furious that we got it so much later than the Americans. And, I mean, I can only speak for our Cineworld, but we got it for, like, Friday to Thursday. We got it for a week, and that was it. And this film has absolutely blown me away. I am just stunned at how great this film was. It felt like it had very little pomp about it. Like, there was not a lot of reviews or anything that I heard, and what I did hear was sort of skimmed over pretty quickly. But this feels like this is probably a contender for my film of the year. I'm so annoyed that not everyone has been able to see this movie because it just didn't get a wide enough release.
I mean, I'm going to tell you why, because it is what it is. And this is the most blind I've been on anything. I didn't know who was in it. I had no idea about anything at all, other than what you came out saying, it's 10 out of 10 on Film of the Year. It's nowhere near that for me. But I loved every second of it. And I thought I said 4/5 of that film, I thought this is tickling the tens. And I can't believe I'm going to agree on something like this. And then that ending was just, it is what it is. You can open to interpretate. I think you're either going to love that or think, what the hell is going on? I know what it's trying to say and all that kind of silly bollocks. It just felt a bit strangely out of place in a film that was so insane that nothing really had a place anyway. But fair play to both of them too. I know one of them, well, they both had fake tits, didn't they? let's be honest. But I saw her, the other one, Margaret
Qualley.
Margaret Qualley on one one of the late night shows. I think it was one of the Good Jimmy. And she was talking about how all the films released this year, a family can't see.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, that clip was superb. But both of them, and I completely agree with the Oscar shouts for Demi Moore. I thought she was unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and yet it is the stupidest film I've seen all year.
I mean, it's off the wall. It's just, I mean, obviously the premise of the story, the nugget of the idea is very much about the women growing older, especially in Hollywood, get short shrift. You know, they're not, they have a shelf life is basically the premise of it. And Demi Moore goes through something called The Substance, whereby she rejuvenates herself by splitting her inner youth out of her. That's probably the best way to describe it without being too spoilery, I think. So it has a very, very simple premise, but the way in which they put it onto screen is just so incredibly out of this world that I'd love to talk to the director on this one, because, like, how on earth do you come up with something like that? Yeah, just completely insane. But both of the performances I thought were fantastic. Demi Moore especially. Like, she's not someone I can say I've ever really considered in anything before. When she's in a film, she's just Demi Moore in a film. This is the first time I saw her and thought, you've actually got, like, acting chops. Maybe it's because she wasn't playing someone who was a million miles from who she's perceived to be. I don't know. I was really impressed with her, though. I thought she was fantastic. And whichever Quaid it was it Dennis who was in it? I always get them all mixed up. Because there's Dennis, there's Randy, and there's another one, isn't there?
I think it was Dennis, wasn't he?
I think it is. He was the slimiest bastard ever. Like, he was horrible.
The prawns.
The prawn scene where it's just him eating prawns with the camera. Like, it's an extreme close-up on his mouth eating prawns. I felt sick. Which, I mean, obviously that was the point of it, wasn't it? But yeah it was.
It's all where you went there, the fisheye lens on the all the old white men giggling in the corridor at one point as well.
Yes. When they walked off and they were walking away, they were prancing around at the end. I properly chuckled at that. Like, there were some people who, like, I had just this massive grin on my face throughout pretty much the last 20 minutes of the film. I was just smiling at how utterly insane it was. And I could hear people like humping and being a bit grumpy and miserable throughout. And I thought, this film is going to divide this audience. Because I can tell there are some people like me who are enjoying it and some people who are hating the experience. And that's my kind of film. And as soon as it ended, the couple who was sat a few down from it, I just heard the woman go off on this rant about how this film made no sense. It was completely illogical. And the guy was just sat there smiling. And I thought, you don't agree with her in the fucking slightest, mate. You're on my team.
You know, when it came up with the name title cards, when it came to the third one, someone walked out.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought, you sat through all of this and you're going to leave now with about half hour left. I mean, there might have been a reason for it, I don't know, but as soon as that came up, and then it turned proper mental, it was too much. I mean, there was one point where, I don't care normally about needles and any of that kind of stuff. I can watch any old fucking shit. The only problem I've ever had is when my own blood is coming out of my body because it makes my head all go wherever. But that was before the incident as well. It's always been a thing. But that's my own blood. Any other, don't care. This film, there was a moment where she's doing it for the first time when she's putting the needle in herself. I don't know what it was or why. I had like a proper sweat. I can't sit here. I can't take this. And then
there's a lot of it as well, isn't there?
Yeah,
there is a lot of that.
But it only happened the first time. The rest of the time, when she's getting the bone marrow or wherever it is out of her spleen, or the base of her spine or wherever it was, not a problem. It was just that initial one, and I was obviously I had shorts on as well, but I was proper, like a proper, like cold fit. As much as you can say, it was really bizarre. I thought, this is maybe too squeamish for even me, but then I got over it and it was all right then. But yeah, I thought the makeup for the most part was excellent. I thought as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like it was uncomfortable, but I can understand why I've read about a lot of people walking out of this film. I really can understand why people didn't stick around. But it was the right kind of uncomfortable for me. As someone who's a bit of a sicko with these things, it was perfect for me.
Yeah, it was. We've watched 3 Human Centipede films. This is nowhere near anything like that.
Yeah, that's a fair point, actually.
It's nowhere near like anything that's in the Saw films or Hostel Part 2 with torture porn wise. It was something else all on its own, which obviously it's probably not all on its own. There's probably loads of these films similar to this. But for my for amateur horror mind, I hadn't really seen anything like this, maybe for a long while. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. But as we'll come into a question later on about it with mine, it's like, how do you even talk to people about this film? Because I know if I tell people, like when I tricked my mum into watching Saltburn and she was mad at me for 2 weeks, I can't say to anyone, go and watch this, because they won't like it. It's very niche.
I did see on Twitter there was a few people who had tricked their mother into going to see this. And some of the responses were, like one person said, I wished that Demi Moore killed Margaret Qualley because she was horrible. There was another person who said it was brilliant until it went mental at the end. And like, I can kind of see why someone might get something out of it up until a point. But that ending is difficult. I think it would challenge a lot of people, because there was at least twice where I thought, they're ending the film now. It looks like, they're both dead. They're both whatever. And I thought, okay, so it's going to end this way. And then it starts back up and something else happens that's completely insane. So yeah, I can sort of see why people might struggle with that.
I thought, because I hadn't checked my watch or anything, because I'm grown up. And I thought, this is like an homage to The Fly 2, with the tongue and everything. And I thought, that's a great ending. And then it was at the ending. And I think that's why I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't like it anyway. It didn't fit for me. But that's, I think if me from 4 or 5 years ago was watching this, I'd hate that film. But now I've been watching the Ari Aster stuff and Bo is Afraid being what it is. And kind of opening my mind to these kind of experimental nonsense that, I know exactly what they're trying to do. I didn't necessarily enjoy that end as much as you did, but it was a hell of a ride, and it's a lot better being like that than being bored.
Yeah, 100%. I will come on to that in a minute about bored. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. As I said to you, I thought it was a 10 out of 10. I don't think I've given... I'm looking at the list now. I don't think there are any other 5 stars on my list this year. If I'm honest, I don't... Yeah, I've said it several times. I've said it in this episode. Don't think it's been a stellar year. I think this is a stellar film. What else have you watched in the last month or so?
I mean, we'll get the other one out of the way first, and then come back to one that's going to be a bit divisive in itself. I watched Worst Ex Ever on Netflix.
I don't even know what that is, Stu.
Yeah, it's another one of these like real murder things.
Right, okay.
Yeah, exactly. But the error episodes, very self-explanatory. The one about the Korean woman is batshit mental.
Oh, so is it like an anthology series?
Yeah.
It's a case each week?
Yeah, it's 4 different cases. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. All right, then.
Yeah, I think the 5th, the 3rd one, the one with the Korean woman, that's completely off the scale. Crazy. But Bit of real crime, bit of true crime. You've got to fit it in somewhere.
Worst ex ever, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Then I started watching Ross Kemp, The Mafia in Britain, which is buried on Sky History, so no one's going to see this. But it's very much in the Ross Kemp on Gangs vibe, where he's talking about the Mafia history in Britain. And I've watched 2 episodes of that now. I think there's 6 altogether. And it's actually really informative. It's not even Ross Kemp being broody and looking at the screen all the time. He's actually been a bit like... He's being like an investigative journalist. It's like a proper documentary piece. It's actually really impressive. Like,
when you say like the history of the mafia, are we talking about the proper Italian families and that kind of thing, not the Guy Ritchie gangster mob nonsense?
All types of mafia are mentioned in the 2 episodes that I've seen so far.
Okay, right.
So you are talking about the Italian mafia, you're talking about the American mob, you're talking about 1960s Guy Ritchie gangland, you're talking about the craze. It is a proper thing about how it's all kind of linked together. And that's just in the first 2 of 6, like I said. So it's really, really interesting. And for me, the other thing that was really interesting that I know it wasn't for you was Mr. McMahon. And now I'll caveat it with saying everyone knows what I am like with wrestling.
Yeah.
I don't really care. Sometimes I'll watch it and I'll watch the main events. So I'll go through periods of watching it all the time. But that's about it. I don't get involved in Dark Side of the Ring. I don't get involved in wrestling podcasts or anything like that. So a lot of the stuff that I know about it comes from you lot. And you kind of escape it most of the time. But saying that, watching this was, and I think what it is the point of, it's not really a puff piece because he comes out as an absolute bellend, which is what he is. But at the same time, you can't deny what that. I think it was Undertaker said that. Mark, was it Mark the Undertaker?
Yeah,
he was saying that. He said that the best promoter of all time. I don't think that's. You can't not agree with that fact for what he did overall over the years. He can still be a piece of shit, which he is. And there's obviously a lot of left out because obviously this is a promotional thing for Netflix having the WWE in January, of course. Which, the reason it's there. But I think for filthy casuals, I think it's fine. I think it's an interesting 6-hour documentary. Is it for people who are fully involved? No, of course it's not. But I think that's the point of it. I think it's in a similar way where Drive to Survive is not for people who like F1. It's to get new fans in. And if, like me, who watches every race, who knows a lot about this stuff, you can see the joins and you can see where they've manipulated certain things and used footage from different races in different places to tell stories that are true, but not necessarily in the way that they're portrayed. So I think as a promotional tool, it was fine. For someone with a vague interest in it, it was good. For people who are completely involved in it, I think you'd probably not get anything out of it at all.
Yeah, which is very much the boat that I'm in with this series. I was mostly bored because it presented nothing new to me. Like, obviously, I know all of the stories, and I thought, okay, we'll at least get to hear Vince McMahon's side of things on some of these stories. But I don't feel like it ever went into any real depth on what he thinks about anything. It all felt very surface level from him. Like, I don't really feel like I've got any better a handle on who Vince McMahon is. Like, I knew he was a cunt before, and now I still think he's a cunt. It's done nothing really. Everything that he said, it sort of made it out like, I did that because it was what was best for business. And it's like, but we've known that's who you are for the last 60-odd years. Like, that's who you've always been. I don't feel like I know who Vince McMahon the person is. And if I'm honest, that might be because I don't think Vince McMahon's a real person. I think he's something of a caricature. I think that's who he genuinely is, don't get me wrong. I think he is a prick like that. I think he is a walking cartoon character. But I don't feel like this documentary did enough to really show it. And there was one bit, there's a couple of bits really. So like when they spoke about his involvement in Nancy Argento, the woman that Superfly Jimmy Snooker most likely murdered. His involvement in that was literally 30 seconds. Well, that's him bribing cops, allegedly. At least ask him about it. But there was none of that. It was literally just a clip that was shown and moved on to the next. Look, ask him. I mean, he'll probably stonewall you, but fuck it, at least just show us. So there was bits like that annoyed me. The death of Owen Hart, which is like a massive thing in the last 30 years, like one of the biggest events that happened. They touched on it a little bit, but again, there is so much behind it with all of the court cases and what have you. And because they've been settled, he can answer it freely. Whether or not he would choose to, probably not, because again, he's a cunt. But at least show us him being asked. The only thing that I did kind of like is every time you had Vince or you had his lackeys in Bruce Pritchard saying some bullshit that everybody knows to be false, it then cut to Dave Meltzer, who would just say, no, that's a lie. Here's the truth. Like, I did enjoy that it was fact-checking them as they were going along. But it just felt very superfluous, this whole thing. It was very surface level. Didn't need to be 6 episodes if they weren't going to go into depth on any of it. And really, the most interesting bit obviously happens right at the very end when he stops showing up because he's been accused of sex trafficking. And I sort of get why he wouldn't want to be there to answer those questions, especially if it's an ongoing case and the feds are involved in it. Like, this isn't just Janelle Grant, this is the FBI are after him. Like, I mean, people think Diddy's going to be in trouble. I reckon Vince is probably on the same boat. He's probably been a few of them fucking freaks off himself, to be honest.
They'll be in this. I was thinking that afterwards. I thought, will they put an episode 7 on this in a couple of years' time like they did with other things?
Yeah.
I'm making them.
I thought like that. Yeah.
Oh, they
because there's still another chapter to be told of this story.
Yeah. And they did it with the which I still haven't got round to watching yet. It was that one that we talked about at the time that I've completely blanked from my mind. That legendary HBO series.
The Staircase.
No, not the Staircase.
Jinx. The
Jinx, yeah. The Jinx. I ain't watched
the second season of that. No, I haven't watched the second season of that yet. I planned on rewatching the first.
Yeah, that was fun. I was just saying fun. It wasn't fun. It was awful.
It wasn't. It was jaw-dropping, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was stunning. What I would say, if you're interested in learning more about McMahon, I would say watch Dark Side of the Ring. I would say listen to Post Wrestling. I think that those two guys on Post, Waiting and the other guy whose name escapes me, those two have done a fantastic job in chronicling what's been going on. So I would say check those out if you want more information on that world, because that they will give you an in-depth look at certain parts of the McMahon history and present as well, in fairness.
Then the bit where he laughed when he was saying, yeah, we had this story where I was going to impregnate Stephanie. I thought, what? Really?
I mean, it's insane, and he doesn't think it's insane.
No,
which is just mind-blowing.
You wouldn't put it past him like fantasizing about doing that either.
Oh, I mean, he's 100% Trump in it. Like how Trump talks about fucking Ivana, whatever her name is. Like, he is, since Steph has been 19 years old, she has been sexualized on WWE TV by her father. Because her father's the one who writes all that shit. Yeah. So her parading around in her bra and panties, as you know, that was the match type. That's all on Vince's say-so. So there's one scene. I don't know if you remember this. You might not have been watching at the time, so I imagine this might be post-Attitude Era. Eric Bischoff, do you know Eric Bischoff?
Yeah. That's why I was amazed that when he turned up with the glasses. Yeah. And I didn't recognise him.
He's just old now, isn't he?
Yeah.
So there was a part where he was then employed by WWF, as it was at the time, and he was running one show and Steph was running the other show, you know, in kayfabe. And there's one part where he approaches Steph, slaps her arse whilst he's wearing a Vince McMahon mask, and then takes off the Vince McMahon mask and they kiss. Like, so Vince has written this, that Steph is kissing someone who's looking like her father. He's insane. Absolutely insane.
It did kind of, because I remember, I did kind of keep thinking back, how have I seen this stuff? I don't remember when the network started. I did have it, I did subscribe, and I watched all the WrestleManias. Remember when they started doing WrestleMe as well?
Yeah.
And I listened to WrestleMe from the start up until a point, and so I did go back and watch all the WrestleManias with them, and some of the individual documentaries that they put on there. But obviously, they were never going to go in depth about their own head honcho.
Yeah, they're heavily propagandized, like terribly so.
But there was a few things like, where was Strowman? Why was he not in there? Is there a reason for that?
Don't know.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah,
it was some things that even I'd heard and they were very bizarre. But yeah, it is what it is. I think people who hate wrestling are not going to watch it anyway.
Yeah.
But like, even I spoke to her the week yesterday, my sister watched it, and she said, "Oh, it makes wrestling interesting." I went, "Well, there you are. Job done. They've won. Done his job."
Yeah, I do find it interesting because I just don't, like, I can't figure out who it's for, if I'm honest. It must be, as you say, for people like you, the filthy casuals who have got like a passing interest in it. And I suppose because it's Netflix, you're going to get all the true crime girlies, which is obviously like, it's quite a big demographic. So I suppose that's really who the target audience is. But because wrestling is so niche and so looked down upon, I suppose that's why it is. Which I think that's also why he got away with being the absolute scumbag that he is. Because in any other field, I think he would have been pulled up before now. But because it's wrestling, it's just kind of ignored.
Yeah. I did like that, though, how they touched on that, how it was all a bit underground, and that whole thing of, oh yeah, you're too thick to understand that it's fake, and then the other side, well, you're too thick to understand that we're going along with it because it's funny and it's theatre.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's your back and forward. That was quite interesting. I never thought of it like that before.
It's right, because I remember like growing up, whenever you'd say, oh, I watch wrestling, people would always respond with, you know, it's fake, don't you? I'm like, obviously, because they would murder each other if these things happened. And plus, The Undertaker isn't really a zombie. That's not how these things work. Obviously, it's fake. But I think people sort of understand now. I think there's some form of acceptance, even though like the figures of weekly viewers now are lower than they've ever been. Like, I think the top-rated show in the States was SmackDown, and that was hitting about 2 million, whereas 20 years ago, it was 10 million were tuning in, just in America, obviously. So, like, it's never been more profitable, but never been less enjoyed. It's never been less popular.
Yeah,
but it's a billion-dollar company. Yeah.
But then, like they said at the end, like the big events make more money and they get more viewers than ever, but that's to be expected.
Yeah, I mean, there's one I've mentioned it a few times, OSW Review podcast, and they talk about some of the old shows, and one of the questions they ask when a show starts is they'll say to each other, how much was the average price of a ticket? And the average price back in the 90s up until the early 2000s was like $40. And obviously I went to see AEW at Wembley not that long ago. I was not in the cheap seats, but I was not in the expensive seats, and I still paid $200. Like, if you wanted the top seats, you were paying $2,000, $3,000, and like the cheap seats, I think, were 40-ish. And that's AEW, who were like the second company. WWE, I think, charged something like $5,000-6,000 for their primo seats.
Yeah.
It's worth asking Dolan about, because obviously he's done a few WrestleManias, but yeah, it's there's mega money involved in it.
It's the same as all American sports. I mean, they said in the background here that the Chargers against the Chiefs, and so fight, it sold out. You can see, and there's no seats left, and yet they're like $300 just to sit behind the posts.
bonkers, isn't it? Absolutely. Just a different world, I think, when it comes to any Americanized sport or anything. I think that's where they want like proper football to go eventually, isn't it? That's what they're hoping for, and it probably will get there one day, disappointingly, but yeah, hopefully not. Anything else you've seen in the last month worthy of mention?
It's not new, but I watched The Nun this week.
Oh, right. How did you find it?
Interesting.
That means it's shit. I mean, like, coming from you, that means this film is awful and you just don't want to badmouth it. You're the most positive person when it comes to films.
No, it was okay. It was. I thought the second Annabelle creation was awful. Going through these ones, it was better than that. But if you're looking at it, you're probably still saying like a 5 out of 10. It was absolutely fine.
Okay.
And I thought, well, we're going to get to a point where he's not going to watch these anymore. But I suppose it's entertaining to a 13-year-old boy, so he still sits there perfectly happily. And for the first time, watched it on projector as well. So when it finished upstairs, he said, "Oh lads, I've got that sound bar for in here as well."
Yeah,
lads, I just watched The Nun, and it was like 84-inch screen. Nah, man, sick. Well, yeah, there we are. Job done.
Excellent. What have I seen in the last month? Oh, the one show that I wanted to mention to you, Stu, English Teacher. It's an American sitcom that's like actually laugh out loud funny. At least twice per episode, something silly happens and it's funny. It's kind of acerbic, like some of the lines that they come out with are a bit on the mean side, but it never sort of crosses over into just being outright arsehole-ish. It takes the piss out of, well, I mean, the way modernity is really, with it being very polarised. And I think this tries to walk the line in between the two extremes. So obviously it's an American series, so we've got the more sort of hard right, and then you've got the very, very liberal with the way the kids are. And they kind of both rub up against each other, but you've got the English teacher in the middle who's just making jokes about it. I've really enjoyed it so far. I think we're 4, 5, 6 episodes in, something like that. But it's been great fun. Really, really enjoyable so far. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. And there was another TV show which has started. I don't know if this will be more you or maybe Matt. I'm not 100% sure, but it's called High Potential. And it is, so Dee, out of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, she plays a woman who has got an eidetic memory. And because she struggles with, like, actually communicating with people, she just tends to watch a lot of documentaries.
Oh.
And it gets to the point where she uses this magical power of being able to remember everything to help the police solve murders. It's like really high concept nonsense, a bit like Monk, I suppose. But it's only 2 episodes in, but I've enjoyed that one as well. It's funny, and I like a sort of a crime of the week. I'm not sure if that'll be more you or more Matt, maybe, but I think that's worth a watch.
It sounds like it's going to be cancelled after about 5 episodes.
Probably. It's either one of those. It'll either be cancelled really quickly, or it'll run for 14 seasons.
Yeah. It's a bit like, I mentioned it before years ago, The Evidence, where they showed you all the evidence that they gathered through at the very start of the episode.
Right.
And then as the episode went on, like you saw all the evidence at the end, and then the whole point of each episode was how they got all the evidence together.
Okay.
Very bizarre.
Yeah.
And bizarre situation to be in. It didn't last. It never even got to the end of its first showing. I think it was cancelled after 4 or 5 episodes. Who was in there? I mentioned it before. The Evidence.
It's decent, to be fair. I have enjoyed it.
Orlando Jones.
Okay. It feels very much like Castle. It's that kind of...
Yeah.
lightweight, but fun with it. so it's still watchable, and you don't feel like it's just too saccharine. Like there is something to it, so it's good fun. On the movie side of things, I have seen Lee, which I thought was great. I really enjoyed it. So it's the film about Lee Miller. So you saw Civil War, didn't you, earlier this year?
Yeah.
The fourth film. So Kirsten Dunst's character, I think her character name was Lee Miller, and that was based on Lee Miller, who was a war correspondent during the Second World War. She went over to Germany and took photographs reporting back to the UK originally, but they wouldn't publish her photos because they were so disturbing, because obviously everything that was happening. So it's the life story of Lee Miller, just as she becomes a photographer after she's quit being. She was previously a model in a former life and then starts to do her photography. It's her trying to get on in the American Army and then go into these places. She was one of the first people in Hitler's house after he'd died. She was one of the first people to take photographs. It wasn't Auschwitz. I think maybe it was Birkenau. I can't remember. No, Birkenau's Poland, isn't it? Maybe it was Auschwitz. I can't remember. A concentration camp. She was one of the first people to take photographs of that. And you go with them through this journey. Andy Samberg's in it, who is a comedic actor who I absolutely love. And he's playing a straight role. And I saw an interview with him before this film where he was talking about this role that he was playing and how excited he was, because his mom was proud of him for playing one of the first Jewish people to be there and sort of help with the war effort after it. And like, it was really moving to see how happy he was about it. I found this film incredibly moving. I thought it was great. And it's just blowing out of the water that I don't like war films, because I clearly do at this point. And this was brilliant. It's a Sky original, so I didn't think it was even going to the cinema. We've had it for a couple of weeks. I don't know if it's still on, but it should be on Sky Cinema soon, I imagine, and it's worth your time. I think you especially will enjoy it.
You just leave with Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet, it's like one of my favourites. I could see Oscar attention for her performance. She produced it as well, so it's a real labour of love for her, this one. I think if you enjoyed Civil War, you will like Lee. I think it's similar tonally. Very good. Like, I kind of want to read more about Lee Miller now, having watched this, because she just seems fascinating.
Why is the picture of Skarsgård on IMDb, he's got no trousers on?
I haven't seen the picture.
His normal profile picture on IMDb.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I have seen that one before. It's very bizarre because he's wearing a dinner jacket and a bow tie and stuff, but no kicks. Like, it's very weird. The other film that I was going to mention is Hellboy the Crooked Man, which was released on Friday the 27th. I like Hellboy. Mike Mignola wrote and directed this film. He's the creator of Hellboy. And it was kind of fine. I think maybe it felt very much like it was a Netflix original rather than something that should have been on at the cinema. It was fine. It felt quite small in its scope. I think the problem is when you compare it to like the Guillermo del Toro Hellboy films, they're not really Hellboy. Like, they feel very big and superhero-y. And that's not really who Hellboy is, at least not to me anyway. Like, he feels like a smaller level character in what he does. And I feel like this is probably closer to the comic books. It wasn't brilliant though. I would say to watch it because I think there's some interesting things in it. The guy who played Hellboy, I was quite impressed with him, and his wrangler, I suppose you'd call her. I thought she was fantastic in it. So it's Jack Kesey. I don't know him, I've got to be honest. It's the first time I've ever seen him, or at least knowingly seen him. He was in Baywatch, apparently, the movie, and The Killer, which was a film that I really enjoyed. Looking at the rest of his filmography, there's not much there. And the woman, Adelaine Rudolph, who played the wrangler of his, she was great. But it just lacked something. And looking at IMDb, it's got a 4.9, which feels a bit harsh, if I'm being honest. But I'd say watch it when it's available to stream. Probably wouldn't recommend you go to the cinema. because there's long stretches of nothing. But when stuff happens, it was kind of cool. But there just wasn't enough of it, unfortunately. Which is a bit of a letdown.
Considering when I saw this was out, I had no idea what it even was. I hadn't heard anything about it at all. And then it was suddenly there. I thought, no, this is a bad sign, especially for something like this. And for the Judge Dredd one, that was the one from a few years ago. It was set in one place. It doesn't matter if it's a small setting. That was like the raid. I mean, that was in a tower block. It doesn't have to be an open world film, so to speak.
This is effectively set in the woods. Like it's just, he stumbles upon this family who are having troubles. They think that their kid has been cursed, so he goes to find the curse. And when he gets there, he realises there's more to it. The crooked man has taken someone's soul, or they owe him his soul, basically. And it's just this journey through the woods to the end of it. It felt less of a comic book movie and felt more of a Conjuring kind of a movie. Like, it was supernatural horror rather than comic booky, which is what Hellboy is, in fairness. But I think if you go into it, if your knowledge of Hellboy is Guillermo del Toro, this isn't that. This is completely different to it. And because Mignola's in it, or written it, Mignola obviously knows the character better than anyone else. So, yeah, I don't think it'll get a wide audience, if I'm honest. But I would still tell you to stream it if you get the chance.
I mean, it's sounding like a Violent Nature. This is.
Yeah, I could see that.
Which
don't get me wrong, it's better than in a Violent Nature. 'Cause it's terrible. There are elements of it, like, the bits of Violent Nature that weren't awful. Like, there's the odd bit that's actually quite interesting.
The deaths.
Yeah, so there's the odd bit where he sort of joined up with the main cast. Those bits were okay. It was just the bits in between that were terrible. Those bits, this is what this film feels like, those bits. Those bits were like a 3 out of 5. The rest of it was like a -4 out of 5. And this feels like the 3 out of 5 level of it, I thought, personally. I don't know if anyone else will get anything out of it, but it's just because I like the source material, maybe. It's a streamer, not a screener, this one for me. Right, okay. Our individual questions then. So mine, I have just stolen off Twitter because I think this is a brilliant question. You get to pick a movie, you keep one actor, but everyone else is played by a Muppet. What's the film?
And I don't know why, but the first thing that came to mind was Armageddon, and you just keep Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I love the Muppets, so I would definitely watch that anyway, to be fair, but that does sound awesome.
And you just play it completely straight.
Yeah, it has to be. Like, you can't have the jokes in there. Miss Piggy has to be the love interest and perfectly normal. You can't pretend like... you can't do the Muppets Christmas Carol. So you should do the Muppets Christmas Carol because it should be a straight retelling of it just with Muppets in place.
Yeah, well, you got Miss Piggy replacing. Miss Piggy replacing Liv Tyler.
That's perfect. I like that. I don't know what it is, but... Sorry, carry on.
And it'd still be better than Deep Impact.
I haven't seen that for years.
I think it's on Netflix. It's on one of them anyway, because I watched it the other day. There was no point talking about it because it's still as bad as it was before.
Because they were both out at roughly the same time, weren't they? If I remember right.
Within weeks of each other. Honestly, 1998 it was released.
If you told me that was 1992, I'd have believed you. Because it feels like it's dated. Tia Leone, though. I do like Tia Leone. Elijah Wood, Christ. I feel like I want to watch it, but I also know I'm going to hate it. God. What a... Armageddon was also 1990. It is funny how this happens, where you get two films about very similar subject matter, both come out within a short space. Like, I will always remember the Prince of Thieves and Men in Tights, always they came out within weeks of each other, and it made no sense. But it just is odd. And Men in Tights is the better of the two, I think. The film that I'm going to go for that I think should only have Muppet is Taken. You keep Liam Neeson.
Yeah,
Liam Neeson. But everyone else is played by a Muppet. And I think you've got to have... It's Maggie Grace, isn't it, who plays the daughter? I think she is Miss Piggy. Miss Piggy needs to be, the woman in peril. I think the bad guy should be Kermit. I think he should be the main villain in it. I just want to see Liam Neeson delivering that speech to a puppet. I think it would just be hilarious. But again, done completely seriously with all the anger. And the fight scenes against like Gonzo and Fozzie Bear and all these people, I think it would be wonderful. I don't know why that was the first one, because I haven't seen that film in probably about 15 years at this point. But I just think that would be the one.
Have you seen them all?
I was talking about this last night, funny enough. I've definitely seen them all. I have absolutely no recollection of what happens in 3.
No, same. I was going to say, I've got it there, it's there. So I got it for £15 last year, the box set of them all. I don't remember.
I'm sure it's his daughter, his wife, and then his daughter again, I think. But I don't remember how it happened or why it happened or who took... I don't know what it is, but it's just completely gone. I mean, from what I can remember, it wasn't a good film. But even so...
I think it's probably because he did so many of them same films over the next few years. Like the one on the plane as well that he did.
Yeah, I can't even remember what that one was called. So I watched Unknown as well, which is, again, just another Taken ripper. And that's one of the worst performances I've ever seen from Liam Neeson. Just terrible that film is. But he went through this... I don't get it because he's not a hard man actor. He's a thespian who's got some comedy chops. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he can do in the Naked Gun films.
Yeah, but it's going to be brilliant though, because we know he can do that kind of deadpan stuff.
Yeah, and especially because Liam Neeson was a proper actor before he was, a crazy comedian. And I kind of feel like that I can see the resemblance in who they were and who they are now. So I am looking forward to that. But I've never bought him as this hard man. It's just bizarre because he's not. He's a granddad, and he's always been a granddad for 60 years. That's been years.
That's the kind of point, though, isn't it? In Taken, that's that you don't expect it. But King George Lucas robbing us. If Qui-Gon hadn't died and he'd been the whole focus on them 3 films, it would have been excellent.
I don't know. I don't know if it would. I don't know if those films are ridiculous.
Would it have been any worse?
I mean, it couldn't have been worse. That's impossible. But I don't know if Qui-Gon was an interesting enough character to not be the death that spurs on the event.
Spoilers for Phantom Menace.
Yeah, spoilers for a 25-year-old's film. That is a good question. I genuinely don't know the answer to it. Because obviously it has to be Obi-Wan or Obi-Wan's got to be there at the end. And Qui-Gon's got to be dead because he's not there in the original trilogy. So what is the best point to kill him off? Probably at the start, because then he does make the promise to take care of Anakin. You're all right, though. I mean, they are terrible films, and it makes no odds either way. It would have been better off if we just didn't fucking have them. That would have been the ideal solution, really. Good question. Yeah. Right. Your question, please, Stu.
I only just want to talk about Qui-Gon now, and it's better than this actual question that very much linked to the substance that you loved it, and there is your film of the year. It never is going to be a film of the year because it's a horror film, and I know some of them get through, some of them break through, and you have things like Parasites and stuff like that. It's not really a horror, is it? Really?
It's a social commentary horror.
Yeah.
It's a horror, but they will find ways of diminishing it.
And that is the point. Why do they have to do this with horror films when it doesn't get respect? Like, we talked about this with comedies before. The comedies don't get respect, but making people laugh is one of the hardest things you can do. Making people scared and getting any kind of emotion out of them is the same level of brilliance for me. And yet, when you say to horror, people automatically shrug and, oh no, I don't like horrors. Why?
I mean, I feel like we should have got Matt in to give him, or Ed, because obviously Ed's not a horror lover either. I do wonder what it is about horror that immediately switches some people off, because like it's the way that you get to feel fear in a safe environment, because we know we're not going to be hurt by the substance. Like, it's not going to affect us because we're watching it. The needles that we see on screen, we're not feeling them because they're not going into our body. But there are people, like in the substance, there was the girl behind me. I heard her shriek when they were doing the needles, and I had to like sort of turn her whole body away so she wasn't looking at the screen. And obviously she must enjoy horror to some, unless she just stumbled in there. But I think, unlike you and I, most people do a bit of research on the films they see. So I don't quite understand why, like normal people, before we get onto the academy, so to speak, I don't know why people have this aversion to horror films. Because if it was any other genre of movie, if I said to you it's a comedy, you're like, well, I don't watch comedies. Like, do people say that? Maybe. I don't know.
There's people out there who've got no joy in their lives. Most of the time, that's you, really. But
I like comedy. I just like specific comedy.
But there are people who are so 100% serious all of the time. Most of these people took their shirts in as well. You can always tell them. You see them in the wild. You know, you're a wanker. You've got no joy in your life. You just know, and they normally are, and they normally don't want to talk to anyone. I
mean, that does sound like me at this point.
But outside of work, well, you don't do it. You work at home most of the time, so you don't have to get dressed. But outside of a formal setting, you see them. I mean, I'll remember when I went to that the live pod, Express Star Poddy at Molyneux, and there was a guy there who, well, I was speaking to Jude later on, and there was a guy there, and he was boasting about how he'd won the prize to go and talk to. Well, he'd bid on the prize to go and interview Gary O'Neill. I mean, he might not even be here by the time he gets the chance to do that. But I think he bid £700. It was for charity, so fair dues.
Yeah,
whatever. But he came over and he was saying to him, yes, I might have to sit in the front of your Porsche because I am quite large and all this stuff. And he said, oh, okay, well, what do you drive? He said, well, I bought the Bentley Continental today. And I thought, you're a cunt, you are. I mean, I was there in a jet shirt with a pint, shorts on. It's a football podcast recording, and he was there in a shirt tucked in. You know, you can imagine the kind of bloke he was. And I watched him for the whole thing because he was in my eye line, and he didn't even smirk once. But why are you here? Didn't make any sense. But people like that,
what you mean? Yeah,
no joys. So there are people who don't like comedies because it's beneath. And I think horror.
I don't know.
Horror kind of falls in that as well with some people.
It does feel like there is a certain element of horrors for kids, which it obviously isn't. But it does feel like there is an element of people who do look down on it because they do think that it's cheap, maybe, I think is the word. They think it's, cheap scares, cheap laughs. Because I don't think comedy gets the same respect from the Academy as well. And that's another genre. I've always said that horror and comedy are two sides of the same coin. They both employ the same tricks, but they just get wildly different outcomes. A good joke comes out of the blue. A good scare comes out of the blue. They have the same tricks. It's just one is to evoke fear and the other's to evoke laughter. So maybe they are quite intrinsically linked. But for some reason, people feel so much more comfortable with just immediately dismissing horror because it's kind of schlocky, I suppose, because it preys on your baser instincts, because everything that happens is more instinctual in a horror than it is in pretty much any other genre. I also think that horror, it probably hides a lot of its intentions. I feel a lot of the themes that horror explores, it's obviously covered in a layer of blood, so you can't immediately see it. So again, going back to the substance, it's a story about what it's like to be a woman growing up. That's the thingy. But it's a body horror about a woman growing out of another woman's body, fully grown. So some people aren't going to see what the message is actually talking about. They're just going to see the nastiness. Yeah, that could potentially be it for people at like the normal person level rather than the awards.
I think when you add the award stuff in as well, where you get things like Train to Busan, which people loved, and people wank off over that thing. But if that was made in America or English, guaranteed it wouldn't get the same attention. Guaranteed.
No, I mean, there's definitely a snobbishness when it comes to imported horror. I think especially when it comes from the Far East. I think Japanese and Korean movies get so much more love than any other type of horror. I don't really understand why, because again, they all follow similar formula. America probably produce more like asylum level films, like the Schlock or at least that's the stuff that, that doesn't break through if that is produced in Japan, for example. Maybe that's it. It's because we get so few and far between that we only get the really good stuff. Because it does feel like there's probably a world of hidden gems out there that we'll never see and never get a chance to see.
Yeah, probably. That we just get the very, very best from over there. Whereas they do get like snakes on a train from us.
Yeah. That's exactly it, isn't it? But I do find it interesting how, like, obviously we had Parasite and we had Silence of the Lambs both win the Oscars. But they're not horror, they're thrillers. They're psychological thrillers. But they're horror. They are horror at the end of the day. They're there to elicit that tingle down your spine. But there is something where the Academy, again, just feel like it's probably beneath them. Like, it's not art. Which is ridiculous, because I think horror is probably the most artistic of all of the genre, to be perfectly honest.
It's most expressive.
Because there are less limits, I think, on that.
Yeah.
You can do what you want within the realms of the world you build. Whereas I think if you're doing a drama, you pretty much have to do it within real structures. So I do think that it's the most expressive art form would be the horror film, personally. But yeah, maybe that's it, because there are no rules to horror, where there are rules to Gone with the Wind, for example. I don't know why I picked Gone with the Wind, but do you know what I mean? Like, there are rules to that which don't exist in other genre. So maybe that's it. They don't like the freedom that you get. Yeah. Right, okay, we'll take a very quick break and then we will talk about The Dying of the Light, Nick Cage's film from some point this year. Sorry, not this year, this decade. We'll be right back. Thanks a lot for joining us in the final part. Oh, Stu, I was bored shitless with this film. Absolute fucking... Honestly, I had to restart it because I completely lost what was going on. I then rewound it 3 times because I kept checking my phone, and before I knew it, I'd been scrolling Twitter for 10 minutes and not watching it. I really, really struggled with this movie.
I enjoyed the first 20 minutes of it. I thought, oh, this has got something going for it here. You got the the bit with the past stuff and what happened to him, and well, you got a bit of you throw Langley at me. You go, oh, give me a bit of Langley. Yeah. Great. Especially after watching Snowden last year and a few other things, which I'll mention later on. Automatically interested straight away. And then the film started and I wasn't. And then I read up about it later and you kind of understand why.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was ruined. It was completely ruined because it was a great idea.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, like, in a nutshell, the film starts with Nick Cage being tortured. Like, this, I'm pretty certain this is probably why Nick Cage took this film, because we see him get his ear mutilated. And I thought, Cage is going to love the fact that he gets to play someone with a mutilated ear, and we see an explosion when it happens. Like, we know what Cage is like. He likes dumb shit. This is perfect for him. And then it's all about the person, the terrorist who did that action, who tortured him. They think he might be alive and they're trying to get to him and find it out. That's the film in a nutshell, which is a very, very simple, very straightforward, very A to B to C kind of a plot. There's nothing, there's nothing particularly fancy about this movie, is there? So it should have worked. And again, this is Paul Schrader, who we spoke about a bit recently because he's worked a lot with Scorsese. I am a fan of Paul Schrader, but it just feels like it's another film of Paul Schrader's and I feel quite let down.
Yeah. And I don't think we can blame him because this is when we found out later that it was taken away from them and the studio changed everything, pretty much. And this is not a film that any of them wanted to show, to the point where they protest against it or something.
Apparently so. Like, I think he wanted his name taken off the credits of it, Paul Schrader did, because he was so angry that they wouldn't give him the final cut. I'm really confused. I mean, we will watch the film that is his final cut in a couple of weeks. It's called Dark. We will watch that movie. So I'm really looking forward to it, to seeing how different that film is going to be to this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of this film, they took it off him. They wouldn't let him do the end. Apparently there was reshoots and all these other bits that they put in. Whatever they wanted to do with this film, I have absolutely no idea, because the end product is fucking terminal. Like, it's really, really boring.
You can tell there were reshoots because people's faces changed because they've obviously got thinner and fatter. And I noticed that straight away, and I'd never noticed this stuff. And you look at it, and they've clearly been working on other films. Like,
yeah, they must have dragged them back, hadn't they, to do it? Because there are parts where clearly, yeah, I was just about to say there are clear wig parts in this film that weren't there in other parts. So yeah, you are right. There are, yeah, you can see the joins in it with them.
Literally,
quite poor. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the first maybe 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, I was all right with it. And I thought, okay, I've heard bad things, but it's Cage, it's Schrader. The first 10 minutes are fine. Maybe this will just be a Channel 5 kind of a movie. Just stick on in the background and it'll go fine. And I just found it so difficult to stick with it, because I just found myself drifting constantly throughout this movie.
Yeah. It's just, they even made Paul Anton boring.
And I've never been able to say that about any of his other performances. He's always like, I've always kind of enjoyed his performances.
They're putting in
listened to them usually, but it just wasn't.
Then he showed up wearing a jumper that Rich wears, and you think, why have they done this to my boy? And he's like, the most interesting part about his whole character was when I thought, is he a double agent? And then nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happens.
It didn't make any sense.
it almost felt like he was just the narrator. Like he was only there just to shuffle the story along, to just recap it and move it on to the next chapter.
You know the bit of me with it,
So wasted.
with a knife?
Yeah.
Like that bit where he chases him down, and then that happens, and I thought, oh, really?
Maybe they're going to do something with him, and they just didn't.
And then the next scene, they're sitting on beds next to each other with their laptops out. What's going on?
Such a horrible, just a miscast, misuse of everybody involved in this. Just awful. Like, I'd rather see why Schrader wanted his name taken off it if this is the final product.
And of all of these films that we have to suffer through, this is the one that you could just watch on Prime.
Yeah. Like, we've struggled to get some of these fucking films, and this is the one that's available everywhere. Of course it is. Terrible movie. Good, bad and crazy. Stu, good? Anything good? I struggle. I've got nothing, I'm honest.
I mean, the idea was all right. I like the idea of it all, but it's again something we've seen in 24 and countless other things, so it's nothing new. I thought, to be fair, one of the things that wasn't that bad was the soundtrack.
Okay.
Nice little beat to it. Nice little kind of espionage, kind of Born Identity kind of beat to it going on. That kept it slightly... If you take that away, it would have been really awful. This makes it slightly awful. But yeah, it really is clutching at straws. It could be one of the worst films that we've seen. I mean, it's not boring. It was just bad.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. In terms of good for me, I've got nothing. I don't really feel like the acting was particularly special. There was nothing interesting in the directing. Maybe once we've seen Dark, maybe something will come to me at that point. I feel like we need to compare what the two films are going to be before we really make a final decision. But there was nothing about this film that would make me want to revisit this. I mean, I'm only interested in seeing Dark because that's the film that Schrader wanted to make. So this is so bad. What was he actually aiming for?
The only good I'll say is, when I was going to say with Cage, which from out of nowhere, I'll say now, I thought Cage was good in this for the one reason that he nailed dementia perfectly. I mean, I've only known one person with it, thankfully, and that was poor Mickey, my one of my mother-in-law's mates, who I met him in 2006, and he was a sound bloke, great. He didn't really like football or anything like that, but he liked beer and he liked trains and stuff, as you'd expect.
Yeah,
someone like who had been married for a long time, but had two dogs. Good guy, fun guy to have a beer with and stuff. And then he got dementia, and it turned him into an angry bastard, and it ruined him. He was a nasty piece of work at the end of it. And how Cage did it in this film was absolutely spot on. He nailed that from that point of view. He nailed it. Okay. But again, that's only through personal experience that I can say, yeah, he got that across, because he looks very, like, with his hand shaking and stuff like that. That happened to Mickey. That exact same thing happened to him. So I've seen that firsthand, and that was good. A portrayal of dementia being the best part of this film.
It's a reach, isn't it? If that's the level we're having to go to. So what was bad? I mean, like
everything else.
Yeah, the script felt so wooden, so lifeless. And like you said, this is about a man who is in the early stages of dementia. There should be a heart to this film that pulls us through. It's a revenge story, effectively. It's a man trying to get back, part of what was taken away from him. And I just don't feel like there was any of that there. Whether that was in this script originally, I don't know. I would imagine it would be because, as I said, this is Paul Schrader. He would put that kind of thing in there. I'm certain of it. So I can only assume it's the studios that have just ripped the heart out of this film because, like, it's almost unwatchable. It's that boring.
I mean, you don't even really want to root for him either because he's like as I said, he's an unlikable bloke.
Mm. Yeah.
He treats everyone around him like shit anyway. And that whole thing with the bullet and stuff was a bit bizarre. Didn't go anywhere other than at the end. Which seemed a bit tacked on and didn't really make any sense. But it was that it was like a sequence of things that had been filmed and they just stuck them together with no real context of plot or anything else. And that's seemingly what it was. I thought it was an hour and 39 minutes long, and it felt like 2.5.
Yeah.
And yet it was nowhere near quick enough. It was slow. Yeah, everything else.
Real mess of a movie that one was. Crazy. Anything? I've got one. So apparently the budget on this film was $5 million and 20% of that budget was just on Nicolas Cage's salary. Cage got paid $1 million to do this film and the rest just had to like suffer because of it. And look, in fairness, I don't feel like the film needed a massive budget, but it just made me laugh that Nick Cage took the vast majority of the budget on this one.
I mean, there's one here. I mean, this film was, 2014? So 10 years ago. One of the reviews, 4 stars on IMDb, probably won't see much of Cage after this flop. How wrong you were, my friend. The ear was literally the most fascinating part of this movie. And yeah, his ear kind of sticking out like an elf and being cut in half was seeing how shit it was in some scenes and not others. Seeing the bad makeup effect, the fact that they looked, I mean, it's supposed to have been 22 years have passed and they just put a bit of grey hair on them.
Yeah,
and
that was the only difference.
Yeah, no other makeup whatsoever. But you could at least put him on like some Jinko jeans or something like that, or at least make it look a bit stereotypically early. But no, they just dyed their hair and give him a bit of a grey beard. It was stupid. Yeah,
just threw a bit of talcum powder in his hair, job done. Yeah, it was awful, wasn't it? So obviously you said you thought Cage was good. Because obviously it's a binary good, bad. I'm going to say good because I don't think he was bad. I think he worked with what he was given.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that is the job of an actor, isn't it, really? Like, he didn't bring it down. Not that he could have done because it was so low already. He did his job and it was fine for what it was. We've definitely seen better. We've definitely seen a lot worse. The film itself is awful, but I don't think Cage was terrible in this one. So, I mean, there's no point in did you enjoy it? Obviously, we very much didn't. But if you did enjoy Dying of the Light, you may also like... What have you got, Stu?
I mean, my first thought at the start was, oh, this is like a Bourne film. And then it was shit. But the fact that apparently Harrison Ford was linked to this and then dropped in place of Cage, just almost clear and present danger, it's better.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, to be honest. The one that I'm going to go with is another Paul Schrader written, directed film called The Card Counter, starring Oscar Isaac. It's a good film. So he plays someone who is an ex-military guy who was in Guantanamo. He experiences all the shit that went on in Guantanamo. It's got our boy Willem Dafoe in there. It goes a bit sideways. Oscar Isaac plays someone who is struggling with what he has experienced previously, and now he's basically, when he says card counter, it's because he just goes to casinos and plays poker. He doesn't like to sleep, so he just goes to the casino and stays there as long as he does. And it's all about him coming to terms with what happened at Guantanamo with Willem Dafoe. It's a really good film, really well written. I love Oscar Isaac. He's up there with our boy Pedro in my books. I think he's just a cool dude. So give that one a watch. I think it's a much better film than Dying of the Light, but it sort of feels similar because it's written by Schrader as well. So I think that there's definitely some parallels there.
We'll be getting Moon Knight season 2 soon.
It's such a pity that that's what they decided to give to Oscar Isaac, because, again, I'm not blaming him, I'm blaming the writing, because I just thought it was pants. It was just so uneven and all over the place. How was WandaVision bollocks? What's he called? Agatha all along. How's that going?
Third episode was not good as the first. It's what? Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol. What the fuck's that? Is that another one?
Is that the next part of God?
Live reactions to NFL coverage here.
So if I spelt his name, Daryl Dixon. Yeah, so it looks like that might just be the name of the next chapter of his.
That might be season 2 of that.
Yeah, I think it must be season 2 of that by the looks of it.
Oh, that makes sense then.
29th of September, so that must be today in the States. Still haven't watched chapter 1 season 1.
Of all the spin-off ones, that was probably the best. I
didn't love the Andy Lincoln, Danny Geraint one. I think that's the only one I've watched, isn't it? I don't think I've seen the other one.
Dead City with Negan and Maggie.
I wanted to, but never found time.
It was all right. It was okay. That's about it. But I couldn't believe that hadn't even been shown here until a few months ago.
It's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous.
Everyone who wants to watch that would have watched it. Like now, I know that if that's out tonight, then that's going to be first thing in the morning. That's going to be available at 8. So
yeah,
that's tomorrow sorted. Great.
Were there any others, or was it just the 3 spin-offs?
Daryl. No, there was 3. That's right.
I felt like a bit like at the end of Game of Thrones, I felt like I was ready for a break from Walking Dead, so I didn't want to dive into any of the other series.
Yeah, it's that anthology thing, and I only watched 4 of them.
They were very hit and miss. The good ones were good, the bad ones were bad. That's always the problem with anthology, though, isn't it? I think because there's no real through line.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think there was only 3. Because the Rick one was supposed to be 3 films, wasn't it? And then they just changed it to 6-episode miniseries, which was better because
of what they gave us. I mean, I'd be annoyed if they'd put them into films, to be honest. I know there was that with the Walking Dead series that started and then they killed off pretty much immediately. God, it was set in I think it was like the next generation of
people. The black and purple logoed one. Another one you're on about.
I can't remember it. World Beyond.
Yeah, I never watched one. I never watched that one.
I watched the first episode and didn't love it. It felt like it was a CW show, if I'm honest, which for The Walking Dead just doesn't feel right. So, no. Didn't get great reviews either.
I'm sure it's on Disney Plus anyway.
It probably is. I know it was on Shudder for a while. But yeah, it probably is, because I think they've got all of it's Fox, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think they've probably got all of them. I've just looked as well, just to completely change the subject back to Dying of the Light and Nick Cage in 2014. So there's 4 films that are released in 2014. If you look at 2013, so the last 2 films that he did, The Croods, which we enjoyed, and Joe, which we enjoyed. And then in 2014, he did a film called Rage, which we've not watched yet. Outcast, which, by the looks of it, is going to be even worse than these. And then the film he did immediately before Dying of the Light was Left Behind. Yeah, Rage has got a 5.0 and then Outcast has got a 4.6 on IMDb. Outcast is the one with Hayden Christensen.
No. Oh, no.
So 2014 looks like it was a dog shit year for Old Saint Nick. Oh, that's awful.
How can you go from that to this year?
Well, yeah, let me have a... Where am I? Let's go back and just have a look. So you've got 2015 bought for Cage. Like, we've watched so many of them. I don't know if it's maybe because we haven't really watched them in order. Maybe, I don't know if that would have helped at all. But also, I don't think I could have sat through the dark period of Cage.
No.
Like, stuff like the... If you had a year of watching these four, at least two of these films, like, it would have just been enough to pack up shop, wouldn't it, I think? So 2015, we've then got The Runner, again, which we've not watched. Pay the Ghost, which we have, didn't like. Then there was The Trust, the one with, what's his name? Elijah Wood, who looked like Weasel. And then Dog Eat Dog, which we watched the other week. So, I mean, this is a run of really, really awful shit. So The Runner, in the aftermath of the 2010 BP oil spill, an idealistic but flawed politician is forced to confront his dysfunctional life after his career is destroyed in a sex scandal. What's the sex scandal got to do with the BP? Like, the trailer is just fucking oil in water and it's about a sex scandal. That's got a 4.7. Dying of the Light. So what's the Dying of the Light? I mean, that's got to be 4 something because it's not 4.5, which, I mean, 2 stars feels generous. Like, The Trust wasn't awful from what I recall, but it also was very middle of the road. Wow. Yeah, this is not a banner time for Nick Cage. This is him trying to recoup his money after probably betting it all away, I'm guessing. Wow. Yeah. Not good times, and I think it is very much shown in his filmography at this point. Right. Is there anything else? I don't think there is the show. That's it. All our questions done. Right. Yeah. So, right, for the rest of the month, then we're going to be looking at Friends stuff. So I think what we'll do is we can split it up. Like, we'll do the male Friends, their work post Friends, or even pre-Friends, like anything not Friends. So we'll do Schwimmer, Perry, and LeBlanc, and then we'll do one again for the females. So we'll get Courtney Cox's filmography, Aniston and Lisa Kudrow, look up some of the stuff that they've done outside of the Friends world. So we'll have 2 episodes on that. Then we'll do our top 5 favourite Friends episodes. And we'll try and squeeze a music cast in at some point. If it's okay with you, Stu, we'll bump Games Cast for November.
Yeah, I can do. It's fine.
Do that first, second week of November. So what we will do then is next week we will be watching the USS Indianapolis Men of Courage from 2016. The one we've all been waiting for. And then the week after, we'll do Dark. We'll do the what this film, this Dying of the Light, should have been. We'll do Dark the week after. We'll give it a week's breathing space. USS Men. Like, it might not be, but I get the impression that this might be difficult to find just purely on the title alone.
Yeah.
Because it sounds so utterly bizarre. Something with a title like that. How have I never heard of this film before? It's only 8 years old as well. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Look at the post. Look at the
horrific
Photoshop on that poster.
Absolutely horrific. So, yeah.
The hat doesn't even fit on his head.
Like, the poster gives strong Pearl Harbor vibes, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm being generous, and I don't think it's even going to be that good, but I'm prejudging it there. We'll see. So, yeah, join us next week. We'll talk about Friends and then Men of Courage.
Yeah, after doing we're going to have to do the male Friends, don't we?
Yeah, that's it. We'll do the boys first, and then we'll do the girls second, I think.
Yeah, and then we can. Yeah. So then we could do The Boys from Friends, and then Real No Courage.
Cannot wait. It's a shame because I don't think Cage has done any work with any of the Friends cast, so I can't even tie it in. I can't think of a Cage film that he's done with any of them. Even ones that we've watched, I don't think we've had any of them, have we?
No. None of them have been in any of the 65 or whatever we've seen so far.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's us done this week. So make sure you've got us on your podcatchers. 5-star review would be tremendous. If you want to get in contact, at Cage Fighting Pod on the socials and cagefightingpod@gmail.com for any emails. Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everyone. That film's it's drained me so much. It made me yawn just thinking about it. It's so bad. It can only get better. Goodbye, everyone.
And it's goodbye from me. And remember, be excellent to each other.